Hello, everyone. Looks like we're live and ready to go. Want to wish everyone watching a happy Valentine's Day and very excited to have three wonderful authors joining me for Valentine's Day so we can have our own little date together.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day.
So we've got Sandie Docker, Leonie Kelsall, and Gillian McMillan. Hi, everyone. Oh, sorry, Gillian Harvey. I could be wrong.
That's fine.
off
Hi,
to a
Jackie.
great,
Happy
off to a
Valentine's
great,
Day.
off to a great
Hello.
start. Just wondering if you want to start off by introducing yourself. I'm sure a lot of people watching have heard of you before, but it would be great to give people a quick introduction. Gillian, do you want to start first?
Sure, I'm Gillian Harvey, and I'm the author of, I think, 6 books now and counting. Lots of them have romantic elements, and the last series that I've been writing is set in France. So my next novel is The Bordeaux Book Club, and it's all about friendship as well as love. So there's an element of romance, but perhaps more importantly, the kind of love that we have for friends and literature as well. So that's me.
Thank you, Gillian. And whereabouts are you based at the moment? I know you recently moved, didn't you?
Well, we're looking to move at the
Oh,
moment.
you're in
Yeah,
the
but
okay.
yeah, we're in Limousin, which is kind of towards the centre, just slightly further south than centre. And yeah, it's lovely lakes and lots of countryside and fresh air and that kind of thing. So it's a great place to live.
Nice. Sandie, do you want to?
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Sandie Docker and I write what's considered contemporary commercial fiction for women, but I have dual timelines in each of my novels and there's always some sort of romantic element threaded through them, and my 6th novel will be coming out in June this year and I am in Sydney.
Thank you. And Leonie?
Hi all, I'm the one with the unpronounceable name. If you've ever been to any of my talks, you know that I always refuse to introduce myself because I can't pronounce my own name, thanks to parents who had tickets on themselves and gave me a French name that is impossible. So it's something like, you can actually Google how to say it, and I do it all the time because I get a sexy Frenchman saying it to me going, Leonie. So I probably researched that way too much. I write rural fiction. I've just had my 5th book with Allen and Unwin release. It's actually my 19th book overall because I write under a pen name as well. So that's the rural fiction, which are all set in Settlers Bridge. A lot of readers are familiar with the fictional area. And I live in the Adelaide Hills and spend half of my time near Settlers Bridge.
And you all have lots of romance in your books. Probably my first question is your romance in your book from lots of experience or lots of dreaming?
I wish it was from experience. I think the romantic leads that I tend to have in my novels are me fantasizing about what my perfect partner might, look like, behave like, be like. And, that's the joy of writing fiction, is that you can play with those things and kind of build the character that you want in there. So I would probably marry every single one of the leading men that I have written, and none of them are based on my husband, and that's okay because he hasn't read my books, so it's all good.
Yeah. My first book was very definitely based on what I wanted to be personal experience when I was 14, 15. I was desperately in love with the share farmer on our property, who's this big blonde Adonis in my mind. Mind you, I did see him on Facebook a little while ago. Like, he got old, and I don't know how that happened. But I most definitely wrote him into my first story. And yeah, like you, Sandy, I guess my books are an amalgamation of what it would be nice to have in a partner. And it's kind of a glorified view, because I think we know in reality, if they were that wonderful, and we had to shave our legs every day so that we looked beautiful alongside them. It would get really old, but it's nice to dream.
And does
I reckon
this
we could
old
do it for sure.
does this old fantasy of yours, Leonie, know that he's based?
He should, because I say it often enough. I actually said it on the local radio station this morning, and he's still a local boy.
Okay.
And I've said it to his sister-in-law because I'm still waiting for him to come back now that I don't like him and say, I'm dying of unrequited love for you, really. And I've loved you
So
for
it
the last
hasn't
40
happened yet.
For me, I think I wouldn't say that any of the romantic leads in the book are based on anyone specifically that I would either know, that I've either known or kind of fantasized about or anything like that. But there's aspects of characters, and sometimes when I read back what I've written, I realise that I've drawn on someone I know or aspects of someone I know. But in the moment, it's very much imagining those characters. And of course, a lot of mine are French, and sometimes they are people who remain quite aloof and mysterious, and they tend to be people that I imagine or group together people that I've seen and that sort of thing. But it's really interesting to think of it that way, because you do start to wonder where they do all come from. Just there must be loads of people in my subconscious just waiting to burst out, I think.
I'm not going to say which of my books, but there is one of the male characters in one of my books where it was the almost an unrequited love in my teenage years. And there's actually a line in there that he did use with me many, many, many years later. And I snuck that quote into the book. If he ever reads it, he'll probably know it. Nobody else will. It's just a little present I gave myself.
I'm just running off to grab my entire Sandie Doctor collection now
To find
go
it.
through which line was it.
I'll tell you in privately.
And I know you've all got wide range of children, ages. Would you let your children read your books?
Well, my eldest are in their 30s, so, I think they're pretty safe even with the erotic fiction under my pen name. My eldest is a girl, and she's 30, maybe 4 or something, because I'm a real good mum and I'm not really sure. And she is trying to read them, but she's got a couple of little kids, so she kind of falls behind. My son very dutifully bought one of my books and posted a picture of himself and his girlfriend with it, but he didn't make it past the first chapter. But my youngest daughter, who's the kid on my socials, so a lot of my followers would be well aware of her, she reads everything before it goes to the publisher. She's a bit slow with giving the feedback, and it usually comes after I've given up and actually sent it to the publisher, and then she yells at me for not taking it on board. But yeah, she reads everything.
Oh wow! None of my children have read any of my books, but that's not because there's anything in there I wouldn't want them to see. I think they just wouldn't be interested in the kind of subject matter. Quite often, I feature a woman in sort of 30s or midlife who looks for a new type of life in France or is trying to escape something, and I just don't think, I mean, maybe in the future, I think in the future they'll probably read and hopefully enjoy them, but right now they're interested in them. They like looking at the covers and things like that, but no, they wouldn't get on with this sort of book yet.
My daughter's just turned 18, and most of the intimacy in my books happen off page, so there's no issues there with her. But she's not interested at all in reading my books. She's very interested in telling people that her mother is an author. So everyone she knows finds that out. My mum's an author, but she has no interest whatsoever in reading my books. She's much more into the YA genre. Tobias Madden is one of her favourite authors ever. So she maybe she will when she's older.
Yeah.
But not at the moment.
Yeah, and that's interesting what you said about, like, yours is more behind closed doors and that. What sort of romance are you all finding you tend to write more like? And maybe as you've write more, has it been changing in your books as well?
Under this name, under the rural fiction genre, mine are all closed door romance. It's usually more about the love than the romance in mine, and it's not necessarily your normal couplings that you'd expect to see in the genre. But then under my alter ego, it's a very wide open door to the entire world with no clothes on.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to tell us a bit more about that. Sometimes.
Sorry, I'm only getting every third word because my internet's so bad.
Okay. I was saying you have to tell us a bit more about your other pen name, your pen name.
Yeah, that's I write as Leonie K. They're my US publishers. And Leonie writes very steamy contemporary fictions, which Sandie, I remember that you beta read, Sandie beta read one of my Hawaiian books and said, my husband says, thank you very much for that. Which I appreciated greatly. Still got that message. So she writes contemporary, very steamy, but she also writes erotic alien sci-fi, which is absolutely huge in the US. So that's like shifters and stuff, alien shifters. And it's great because you get to create a whole world so nobody can really tell you that you're doing anything wrong. So it's kind of a mental break from my other books because my rural romance, I go quite dark and I tackle a lot of issue-based stuff in them. So that takes up quite a lot of headspace and it's quite hard to get the balance between being romantic but also dealing with issues. So then, we just flip over to the aliens and have fun. And, if they're like bacon, you can have them so many ways and there's never enough.
I do have one open door scene in Kookaburra Creek Cafe, which was my debut novel. And there was a reason for that. Yeah, she becomes pregnant and that's basically the turning point in the story. And I remember getting feedback from one of the school mums who tends to proofread my stories for me. And she just pulled the scene apart about, I was trying to picture how that would work and where her knee would be and where her leg would be. And it just doesn't work, Sandie. Have you actually tried this? And so ever since then, I've been too scared because people are going to tell me I'm doing it wrong.
No, but Sandie, that's why you use aliens, because you can have any number of arms, legs, and appendages. You can't get it wrong.
Oh, we'll in my next novel, The Lyrebird Lake Ladies Go, we'll stick an alien into Lyrebird Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine are all also, I guess, closed door. I don't really intentionally write it that way. I just seem to kind of fade to black when it gets too that way inclined. Maybe I'll be braver and write a scene that's a bit more steamy one day, but right now it's more kind of emotional connection and sort of emotive and relationships, not only between lovers but also mothers and daughters and family members and friendship and those kind of the stirring of that sort of love that can come into all different aspects of life as well. So maybe a little tamer and no aliens.
And I'm interested to know as well, like we're all sitting here on Valentine's Day night for us in Australia, but it's still the morning and for Gillian, so maybe she's got some really exciting plans tonight. Just wondering what your ultimate Valentine's Day date would be.
The ultimate, or what actually happened? Went to OPSM and got some new glasses today. And then I went to netball grading and sat in the rain and graded a bunch of 11-year-old girls playing netball. So that was my actual Valentine's Day. Oh, gosh, my dream Valentine's Day. You know what? Something that I don't have to organise would be at the top of the list. If somebody else can take responsibility for it, I'm already a very happy person. A nice dinner, a nice movie, and a cuddle on the couch would do me absolutely well.
Yeah, I think
I'm with you, Sandie. Sorry, Gillian, go ahead.
No, it's okay. You go ahead. You go.
I was saying I'm with you, Sandie. As long as I don't have to do anything, it's fine. So we actually had my partner and my daughter had lunch out today. So I went, I'm not making any dinner. We had some leftover schnitzel from her birthday dinner last night. And I was stand up in the kitchen, grab a bit. So I didn't have to do anything. And my partner brought me a pot of marigold and then he's got out of my way. So to me, that's actually pretty perfect.
Yeah, we don't have any plans particularly for tonight. We were going to try and go out to lunch. We've got with the 5 kids, we don't often get to go out in the evenings. There aren't many babysitters who can cope. Some people offer, but you just think, no, you don't know what you're offering. So we were going to go out for lunch, but now all the kids are sick in various ways, mildly, but enough to be off school. So I guess that's that. But we're really rubbish at celebrating things like Valentine's Day and anniversaries and all the things you ought to be doing. And we've got out the habit. But I'm not massively into overt gestures of romance because my first real boyfriend was just so over the top. I loved it at first, but kind of got a bit old. Like anytime we'd have any mild disagreement, I'd get a huge bunch of flowers I knew couldn't afford. And the time I've just been talking to a journalist about this, but when I was 17, we went out for an evening meal and he hired a red tuxedo-clad barbershop quartet to serenade me in the restaurant, and that's my maxed out Valentine's Day, and I'm still recovering, I think. So.
And how old were you then?
I was only 17, so I was dying.
I
was dying.
I do get a bunch of red roses every Valentine's Day. He has not missed one in 30 years. This will be the 30th one he's done for me. But this year he didn't sign the card. Like it comes from the florist, so it's printed, but it's to Sandie, I love you, blah, blah, blah. But there was no name on it. And I said to him, I wonder who this is from. This could be, I think Henry Cavill must have sent me some flowers this year. So I'm going with Henry Cavill sent me flowers this year.
And we've got quite a few people watching, so just wanted to remind the people watching, if they have got any questions, please type them in comments and I can read them out. I've got a question from Sandra. She wonders if when you're out and about, you take notes for inspiration.
Yep, literally, actually do. Back in the day, it was pen and paper notes, but now it's on the phone. I absolutely do, particularly, like on public transport and things. I remember when I used to catch the ferry to work, there was this one guy on the ferry that just caught my eye, and so I actually wrote notes of what he was dressed in and how he held himself, and he is in one of the books. I've got no idea who he is or what his name is. And even things like little traits. Somebody might have a particular physical thing where they, rub their chin, or the way they walk, or they've done a kind gesture to somebody that you noticed, and I do actually take notes on those little things if they've sort of captured my attention, and then do sprinkle them in to characters that I have.
I think for me, my whole life is sort of taking notes and observing and picking up on characteristics, but I'm not organized enough to make notes. But I always feel like I've got in the back of my mind a little scribe who's doing that for me, and it's only later that I can kind of sometimes pinpoint little characteristics that have come out, and I think, oh, that's because I was going through that at the time, or I was thinking about that kind of thing. And so, I mean, I think it's a great idea to make actual notes and really study a character. I think you do pick up, and you do find yourself being really interested in people. I don't know whether I was always that way, just someone who was naturally interested in people, or it's become more since I've been writing. But you do tend to kind of pick up on things and notice things about people, and it's just all human life is here, really, isn't it? That you find aspects of people that you think really define them as a character, but no actual notes. Although maybe I should start that.
It's only because I would forget otherwise if I don't write it down.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I probably.
But I forget where I put the notes. I make the notes and I'll do them like on my phone. It's never anything to do with the book I'm writing, but it'll be, a view or, a person or whatever. And quite often I'll dictate into my phone and it doesn't understand my accent, so that never works anyway. I will write on scraps of paper and lose them. And I find notes later, and I've written on top, put in echoes, and it'll be put in a book that was published 3 years earlier, and I've just found the note I wrote for it. And memorably, last time I was in Sydney, the kid and I got stuck near the fish market in Sydney, Sandie.
Yep.
And it was really, really hot, and the fish market was closed down, and we're really hungry and we're really grumpy. And we're walking through Darling Harbour, and the place that was open offered pictures of margaritas. So, what's a girl to do? We went, got a picture of margaritas, started brainstorming a book idea, had no paper. So we have this cash register receipt paper with an entire sketch of a book written out on it, slightly drunken sketch of a book written out on it. So, yeah, note taking is good if you can read your notes.
I always say that writers are first and foremost observers, and we are always watching what's going on around us. So,
yeah, be very
afraid. Not be good people to have around.
Yeah. Well, Kim's got a question that's in relation to that. She said, do any of your friends feel nervous about being around you, that you're going to put them in the book?
I find I have quite a few clients who ask to be put in books all the time because I'm a professional counsellor, and I have clients who are forever saying, you can write my story. I'm like, yeah, no, actually I can't write your story. We do have laws against that. But no, my friends haven't worried yet. Have they, Sandie? Are you worried?
No.
No, with mine, I think no one's ever said they're worried. So I'm guessing they're not. I did have one guy who he'd obviously, my debut, Everything Is Fine, features a kind of real muscle-bound hunk, which he turns out not to be a great guy in the end. So I could tell my friend hadn't read the whole book, but because I called him Dave and his name was Dave, he just thought, oh, she means me, and he couldn't really be further from a muscle-bound hunk. It's not possible to get, and he was like, oh, you put me in the book, and I was thinking, yeah, you probably haven't read the next chapter yet, but no one's afraid as far as I know, not yet.
Yeah, I don't think any of my friends are afraid yet. I think some of them would like to be in my books. I've threatened people, like my physio was giving me hell the other day, and I said, I'm writing you into a book and I'm killing you off. So I've threatened that, but no, there are people that should be afraid, because I tend to do the opposite thing. People that have upset me will find their way into my books, but they'll never know it because I do it so subtly that only I know that it's a reference to them. So.
And Elizabeth wonders if you've got any advice you would give aspiring authors.
Wow, we were all so silent there.
Probably because we've got too much advice to give between us. The one piece of advice that I always give, and it sounds completely ridiculous because it's so obvious, is to write. The number of people that I see at events or in the courses that I did before I was published, and they talk about how they want to be a writer and they've got all these wonderful ideas, and I say to them, well, how much have you written? And they haven't actually put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. And you have to take that leap. It's frightening the number of people that want to be writers that don't actually write. So that's the first thing you have to do. You have to get the words down on the page. And it's like anything else in life. To be good at it, you have to do it a lot. So the sooner you start and get those words down, because it's going to take you thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of words before you're any good at it.
And I would say, sort of leading on from that, once you get to that stage and you're querying agents, because I feel one thing that really, I finished my first book when I was in my 20s and didn't get an agent till I was in my 30s, which isn't such a rare story. But with mine, I just kept losing faith in myself. I'd send off to sort of 5 or 6 agents and get some rejections and think, oh, the book's rubbish, write another book, do it again. And now I realise that it was a lack of self-belief more than anything else. It wasn't that I always thought my next project was going to be so sparkly and much better. It was more that I just didn't have, you've just got to keep going. Because even I know lots of writers who are, I would consider very, very successful, who have crippling self-doubt still sometimes, and days when they feel rejected, they get a bad review, or they have an altercation with an agent or something like that. And the confidence is such a fragile thing, and I think you've just got to not be yourself. Just imagine you're someone else, and just you're the secretary that sends off the submissions, and you're not going to stop no matter what, because it's that persistence. I think that's what often separates a published writer from a writer that wants to be published. It's just that they just somehow dragged themselves along and kept going. So yeah, I'd love to go back and say, come on, just send a few more submissions out to myself back then. But hey ho.
And I think that's very, like, certainly not a writer myself, but I've spoken to lots and lots of authors, and that's what you're saying is what happens to lots and lots of authors. And they do just keep, and that's why I think what makes them successful is they do keep trying and trying.
Yeah, the self-doubt creeps in. But I think my most important piece of advice to any aspiring writers, or I still class them as writers, would be, don't look at any published writer and assume that they are better than you, because we're not. It's luck. 90% at least of this gig is luck. Sandie and I don't know your story, Gillian, but Sandie and I, we've both been rejected so many times, and it's just the luck of getting the right manuscript in front of the right reader who passes it on to the right editor at the right minute of the right day. And honestly, it comes down to that. It is, you've got to have a little bit of ability, but you've got to have an absolute truckload of luck.
And Elizabeth, the other thing that I think is really important is to surround yourself with other writers, because they're the only ones that understand the journey. You can have the most supportive family in the world, but nobody gets it quite like another writer does. And Leonie and I, we started this journey way back when. I don't even want to think when we connected on Twitter back in the day, which I'm no longer on, and having that person that's going through it with you, that understands what it's like to put those words on the page, that understands what it's like to get that first rejection, the 10th rejection, the 50th rejection, and have somebody on that journey with you. So whether it's one person or a writer's group, surround yourself with writers.
No, great advice from all of you. And I've got a really good question from Sina. She wonders what you struggle with the most while you're writing romantic stories.
I guess
for me,
go, Gillian, go.
Oh, I know. I was just going to say, I like my romance to be quite realistic, so it's pleasing the reader, getting that sense of completion without just buying into all the kind of automatic predefined ideas of romance. So having a character with flaws, or maybe a character who they maybe will not necessarily ride off into the sunset. They'll just agree, yeah, we're going to start seeing each other. It doesn't have to be. It's finding that balance between what I feel is realistic and believable, and still has that hint of future and romance and that kind of thing. For me, it's just that fine balance.
Yeah, balance was going to be the word that I used as well. Balancing what, in real life would be a guy that would, I would find attractive and want to date or whatever, and how that then plays out on the page, because, the minutiae of life is not in itself that interesting, and if you look at the relationship that you have with your partner, 30 years later, there's not a lot of interesting things that would, go into a story that would make great reading. So it's finding that balance. And I'm actually also fighting in terms of balance to write romantic characters and romantic relationships that aren't over the top, I guess. I've had a bit of a tussle with my editor on the one that's coming out in June, the romantic lead in that one. She said he's too nice. But I want to see nice men portrayed in fiction. We've had enough of the toxic men and the alpha men and those things. That's what, I'm at a stage in my life where that's the kind of thing that would really attract me, is a nice guy. So there's been a bit of a tussle. So, and that comes down to where the editor might be in their life and where I am in my life and what we find appealing and attractive. So I'm actually having a bit of a tussle with that one at the moment.
I actually missed the question because I'm in the country and my internet is so glitchy. I'm getting bits of this. So I hope it was a really hard question and I've ducked it.
I'll ask you another question instead, Leonie. So, what is your favourite romantic gesture? Hopefully you heard me.
Favourite romantic gesture?
Yes.
Was that? It's probably a bad time to admit I'm not a huge romantic, but it's probably because I'm spoiled because my partner is a huge romantic. So I get to go, oh, it's enough, go away, leave me alone a lot. I think, romantic gesture. I think it's just acceptance more than anything, which isn't so much a gesture as something you work towards together. We both have our own space. We can do our own thing. We can live together but separately and pursue our own ventures. And to me, that's the epitome of a good romance, is being able to be together but also be apart. It's very unhealthy to need to be together all the time, even though we might write our books like that. That's not how it actually should be. So yeah, I think the best part of romance is moving through those first few months or years where you're so into each other that you can't bear to be apart, and growing so that you reach that place where you're comfortable with each other, where you can share things, or you can choose to be silent if you want, but you know that you're still there for each other when it counts.
And Jody said opening the gate at the farm is romantic for her.
For me, the most romantic of gestures it's not the gesture itself, it's where it comes from. So if that gesture comes from a place of them knowing you and understanding you, that to me is everything. And it doesn't matter whether that's taking care of some chores when they know you're upset, or taking you to your favourite restaurant, or, not that this has ever happened, but flying you to Paris for the weekend. It wouldn't matter what the actual gesture was. For me, if it's come from the place where they know and understand me, that floors me every time.
Yeah, I'd definitely agree with that. I think I was trying to think of an example myself, and it's sort of similar. Like when you can't sleep, they get up as well. That sort of thing. Just putting themselves out a little bit to support you, or knowing that you could, if you get stuck anywhere, you can call them and they'll come, even if it's really inconvenient. That kind of thing goes beyond. I suppose it's not a gesture as such, but it's real love. It's something that is not done for effect, but done because they want to, and as you were saying, because they understand what you need. So yeah, definitely agree with that.
However, should Henry Cavill or Hugh Jackman want to fly me to Paris for the weekend, I'm not going to say no.
And what about if you could bring one of your characters alive from your book? Who would it be and why?
Clearly the one in the first book who was the love of my life, but back like he was then.
I'm going to say, you have him now. You don't need to bring him to life. He's right there.
No, he's still a town away and unaware of my existence.
Gosh, that's a tough question, isn't it? Are you talking about the romantic ones or the friend ones? Who would you like to spend the day with? Gosh, I think there'd be at least 2 characters from each of my books that I would want to spend time with. And as I said, any of the males I've written, I'd happily marry. So.
Yeah, so that is a tough question. I can't think of anyone that I would want to inflict on the world from my imagination, but yeah, I think just spending time with a lot of my characters would be great. Maybe not romantically, but certainly I'd like to have a good chat with them, some of them, and there's some real I write a lot of stronger older women as well, and I think just they tend to be in the books, they tend to sort of have good advice and be really capable, and it'd be great to sit down and have a proper chat with one of those women as well.
Although I do wonder whether it would be a case of never meet your heroes. You know how you say, yeah, because you'll always be disappointed. I wonder if we had that ability to bring these characters to life, and then they would take literally on a life of their own. Would they meet our expectations, or would we be disappointed?
Well, they're still going to leave their dirty undies on the floor, aren't they?
And what are you reading for Valentine's Day? I've just started reading myself the other Bridget Jones by Rachel Johns, and I've only really just started it, but heard really, really great things about it. Wondering what you're reading.
Well, I'm finishing off Sasha Wolseley's Snapshots from Home because I'm interviewing her on Friday, so I need to get that book finished for that. Yeah, so that's what I'm reading at the moment.
I'm rereading Joanne Harris' Chocolat. I haven't read it for years, but the book that I'm currently working on is set in France, obviously, as they all seem to be at the moment, but it's going to be a woman who runs a little bookshop in France. So I just want to remind myself of the feelings that I got from that book and use it to inspire me as well. So it's a really lovely experience to revisit that book after so many years.
I haven't actually decided what I'm reading. I've got a mountain of books to read, as I'm sure we all do, but I never read whilst I'm writing something. So I just typed at the end on a draft yesterday, which means I reward myself by reading a book now before I go back through and look for all the XXX. Whenever I can't think of what I'm writing, I just type XXX and go, I'll go back later and fix that. So tonight I get to finish my glass of wine and then choose something off my stack. I have Penelope Janou's Shelter from the Storm looking at me, and I'm very tempted to dive into that one.
Yeah, no, sounds like some good reads happening tonight. And I'm also interested to know, and I was thinking about what I would answer for this question as well. What is your favourite romantic movie? I was thinking about it, and I think for me, probably Ghost or Dirty Dancing. I'm a big Patrick Swayze fan, so that would probably be my top two.
I still haven't watched Dirty Dancing. Rachel Johns is disgusted with me.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've watched it. I couldn't tell you.
I did see Ghost just last year. I caught up on Ghost.
Oh, really? Wow.
Romantic movie. That Christmas one, Taylor. What Christmas movie is it that we like? The one with Hugh Grant in it.
Love Actually.
That's it. Yeah. I love that because that's all the good stuff. I love Christmas movies, like good Christmas movies. So that's that's got everything in it.
I really like. It's probably not. It's classed as a romantic comedy, but My Best Friend's Wedding. I just love that film. And maybe it doesn't have. It's a bit. Maybe not the happy ending, but it's showing recovery from heartbreak as well. But I can't get over the scene where they all break into song at the restaurant. It's just my favourite of all time. So, and actually I read this this piece where someone was saying that the characters in that movie, or the actors, sorry, was saying that they would be willing to do a sequel, and that would be really interesting, I think, after 20 years. Did that marriage actually endure, and that kind of thing. So, but I really love that movie.
I will watch pretty much any rom-com and any Christmas movie going. I've got a wide plethora of romance movies that I'm very happy to watch. The one that gets me here every single time I watch it is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which was a book first, which I read and loved and bawled my eyes out in, and then the movie came out and I watched it and bawled my eyes out again. That one
I don't think I've watched that one. And what about you? Do you have questions for each other? I've been asking lots of questions. Maybe you've got some.
I'm happy to ask Gillian a question because I have a book club book as well, the Wattle Island Book Club, which is the yellow one behind me. What do you think, because this current one of yours is a book club book, what is it, do you think, that is such a romantic concept of book clubs in books that draws us in as writers and readers?
I think certainly from in my book, the fact that these kind of virtual strangers are discussing characters and motivations and scenarios, and it brings them closer together in much more in a much smaller time frame than you would expect in real life, because you often don't have real conversations in life, not until you're really, really close to someone, but they begin bringing aspects in of their own life and reflecting on the same characters in totally different ways because of their life experience to date. So I think that's what's really come out. And I don't know, but most of the books that they read are kind of classics because it's a lot easier to write those into literature. But they all find things that they can relate to. It reminded me actually how much I love some of the more classic texts and some of the ones I want to reread as well, because you think of them as being set in the past, obviously they are, and out of date, but actually the emotions, the situations that really they bring up are so relevant now as well. Did you find that with your own book, with your book club book?
Yeah, the thing that I loved about it was going back in and picking the books that the book club would read, because they were books that I could then talk about. And it's that closeness that you find, and Jackie, you would know this from running a book club, that closeness, the close relationships that build within a book club is really beautiful.
So, Sandie, can you tell us what the new one is about then?
The new one is the Lyrebird Lake Ladies Choir. Obviously, there's a choir at the centre of this. I haven't actually got my elevator pitch ready yet for this one because we're still editing. But there is dual timeline again. We have a woman in the present thread whose life has unravelled. She finds herself homeless, which was a really interesting topic to get into. Young woman who's homeless, and she discovers that the lullaby she always knew growing up, called the Lyrebird Lake Lullaby, comes from a real place. And so she decides to go there to see what she finds. And what she finds is that there is a very big connection between herself and some of the other members of Lyrebird Lake, including the two ladies who run the choir. And they started their life in Ireland but didn't stay there. And I'm not going to tell you why. So... And Lee, you write the hottest guys I've ever seen on the page.
Yes, it was personal experience. Back to your question, Jackie, totally.
Does your partner ever get jealous?
There was one stage at which he said, "Oh, this is me in this book, isn't it?" And I was like, "You wish," much like your Chris. No, Actually, I don't know if he's read any of my erotic stuff. He definitely that was him in that case. So no, I don't think he ever gets jealous.
But even your rural stuff, even your rural heroes, they're hot guys, and not just physically, but emotionally and their souls. Like, I would date any one of them.
So would I. I like them not to be too hot physically, and I like all of my men to be scarred, emotionally, if not physically, but potentially both, and to be carrying some baggage that they've got to work through, because I just think that makes them so much more interesting and deep. I don't want this chiseled jaw, bulging biceps guy ever on my pages. Unless he's got something very deep and emotional also happening. The guys are pretty hot and they're fun to write, but no, I don't think Stephen gets jealous.
What about research for your romance scenes?
Well, I don't think we can talk about that on here, can we?
This is PG, isn't it?
When I put it on YouTube, I would be putting adults only.
Fair enough. Well, actually, with the erotic fiction, aliens aside, you do have to research what is physically possible before you put it on the page. You can't just write any old thing unless it's the aliens. So yeah, there is that whole arms and legs and what can possibly contort where. So research is definitely a thing.
Is there anything you found that maybe totally surprised you?
I'm not sure if we're still talking about this research in that sense now. Let's elevate this a little. Yes, research that surprised me was research into things like the Country Women's Association, because being rural romance, I do tend to feature them. And I did have that, time-honoured view of these old biddies just doing the baking and the sewing kind of thing. And I was really interested to find out, how much political clout they actually have, what they've advocated for in Australia. And it's just been enormous. Things like the mobile breast screening units, compulsory seatbelts in cars, they're down to Country Women's Association advocating. So every single book has some element, because my books do have to be researched because they're dealing with heavy topics. Every book has revealed something that has been really interesting, and it's just a matter of whether I can actually keep it in my little brain or not.
If we're talking about research and the relationships within the books, because I write dual timeline and I've always got a past thread in my stories, having to research behaviour of people back in the eras that I'm talking about, what was socially acceptable and not socially acceptable, particularly out in public, those sorts of things make some interesting research. And then you fall down research rabbit holes. And I know both Lee and Gillian will know exactly what that's about. You start off researching when was the first Lamington made, and then you go down this research hole that you never thought you'd end up in. And you can find out some really interesting things, and you come across pages of, the 1923 guide to being a good wife, and you look at those things on those pages and you go, what? Things that would never fly today. But yeah, so particularly writing dual timeline, you do have to get those sorts of aspects right within the relationships that you're writing.
Yeah, and I think with my books at the moment, I have obviously French friends that I know, and a lot of my research is asking them for their real lived experience in terms of things like the books that they've read at school. Like the book I'm just working on and planning at the moment is this bookshop, but it's got English and French books, and I need to know what recommendations I'm going to make to some of the people that come in. And of course, I've looked up some French classic books and things like that, but I really want to make that very realistic. So a lot of mine is talking to people that I know, or reaching out to bookshop owners over here and really finding out how things work and making sure I don't make mistakes in that way, because a lot of the way things work in France, especially when anything's to do with bureaucracy, it can be a bit unusual or not what I'd see as logical. So I have to really make sure, because I know that otherwise someone will pick it up if I put a foot wrong there.
And I know how important readers' feedback is for authors. Is there anything that anyone wants to share that you might have had from a reader that's really touched you?
Yeah, it's really nice when they reach out, isn't it, guys? With the nice messages, not the sometimes not nice messages we get. I've had two that have really stuck with me over the course of it. And one was from a reader who emailed me, and her husband had died, a few months beforehand. And it was the first book she'd read since he died, and it really touched her. So that obviously touched me. And then another one from a reader who had a stroke and had lost a lot of her cognitive function from the stroke. And it had been 18 months since she'd been able to actually finish a book because of that. And I cannot remember which book it was, but one of my books, it was the first one she'd finished since her stroke, and it meant a lot to her. And that one has stuck with me too.
Yeah, I just, the positive feedback, even if it's just people who drop in and say, oh, I loved this book, or every time you put a post up, same people jump on to say they loved your book. And it counts every single time they say it, because we're sitting here in front of our computers trying to put words on a page, feeling very isolated most of the time, and doubting ourselves every minute of the day. So when somebody jumps in and says, oh, I really loved that book, it means absolutely everything. Probably I've had so much good feedback because dealing with issues, I always get people jumping on saying, yes, I know about this issue. But I think with the Willow Tree Wharf, it dealt with domestic violence. And I had 2 readers who got in touch directly and said that it was their lived experience. And one said it was really nice to be able to see myself. I've left the situation, but it was really nice to be able to see myself and not feel that I was in the wrong. And another one said, I'm in that situation now, but it's amazing to know that there could be light at the end of the tunnel for me, which was a huge thing to say, because obviously she's not going to have a lover restore a paddle wheeler for her, as happened in the story, but just the fact that she could take enough away from the story to see herself and find something positive in it was like, that was so incredible. That was better feedback probably than I've ever had professionally as a counsellor, which seems, wild to know that you can get it through writing fiction. You're touching people just the same way, but more people.
I think also since becoming a published author and getting that kind of occasional email or really lovely review that where you've really touched someone, it makes me realise, because I've always in the past assumed that authors would be far too busy to care what I thought of their work, and now I do. When someone's book really touches me, I make sure I kind of pay it forward as well, because I know now that it will mean something to those authors. So I find myself writing messages when something's really resonated with me as well.
And you never know exactly how it's going to hit. So my last year's book, The Red Gum River Retreat, I got a handwritten message through a library. It was a mobile library service that had given her my book to read, and she's 90-something years old. She's very, very ill. And she, thank you for writing this story. She enjoyed the war aspects because she lived through World War II, et cetera. But the bit that got me and made me cry, because she is so elderly and she's very, very ill, is this will probably be the last book I ever read, and I'm so grateful. And I lost it completely. You just never know. Just never know.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for spending Valentine's night with me. I better let you go to get back to all your romance that I'm sure you've got planned.
I can hear the husband calling. He's oblivious.
And thanks for everyone who joined in. We had some great questions.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye.
Bye.